My name's Sebastian Simpson and I'm the Business Development Manager at Visilean, and I'll be your host through this kind of webinar series. So over this series of webinars, we will teach you how to digitalize construction using our cloud-based solution. With COVID-19 restricting construction sites all over the world, now is as good a time as ever to improve processes and become more efficient. Today's webinar will be a very brief overview of various aspects of digital construction, and in the coming weeks we'll go into each aspect in a bit more detail. We'll do a question and answer session at the end of this webinar, so if you've got any questions you can hold them till then, and we'll then try and get some people up to answer them. So as I said, it's a six-part webinar series. So today's session is about digitalizing construction and project management. Next week will be aligning technology with lean processes. The week after is production planning. The week after that, production management, then lean and BIM integration, and then finally progress visualization. Now we will try over the coming weeks to get some guest speakers, some people in the industry that are kind of being innovative, using new softwares, using new processes, and try and get their take on things as well. So tune in, we'll try and get a few more of those. So let's begin with session one. So before the challenges of COVID-19, the industry was already kind of feeling the pinch. Construction News posted in January an article stating 22 construction firms in the UK were in some stage of administration to bankruptcy. Companies ranging from 1 million to around 100 million worth of turnover, so they weren't exactly small companies. Now this was already a key indicator that processes needed to improve and companies needed to become more efficient to survive. So now the whole world is facing a new challenge with COVID-19. The construction industry and construction firms are facing a huge challenge to survive. Profit margins were already very tight, and now companies are dealing with closing down sites for indefinite periods of time, and the sites that are open are working at a reduced capacity with less people as they could be sick or self-isolating, people working from home, and then if they are open, they're having to adhere to social distancing. There has never been a greater need for communication and collaboration in construction. So what's next? So work will slow down, and we're already seeing in the UK and around the world construction sites are closing down. The sites that are kind of open are having to adhere to social distancing. So again, that's making progress extremely slow. And then the whole kind of economy will feel a financial strain, and construction industry as a whole. The need to digitalize, collaborate, and innovate is the greatest it's ever been, and to try and limit the impact of COVID-19. So at the moment, people are finding a lot of time on their hands. So now is probably the best time to have a pause, think, and strategize their projects. So we've broken this down into two sections: assessment and digitalization. So to start with the assessment side of things. So you need to assess, can work continue? And if it can, at what pace and how? Then what are the requirements needed to do this? So this will be affected by guidelines being brought in by the government. And then what's the status of resources? So can you get the materials you need? Is the supply chain still working? There was actually an article written today that said BAM Nuttall paused all construction last week for a week, had time, assessed everything, strategized, and now this week they're working back open. So it just shows that the time it takes, if you take a pause, have a think about things, then move forward with a new strategy, it can work. So then we move into the digitalization section. So once you've kind of had your pause, you've planned, you then can reschedule the project based on new dates and constraints, collaborate over a new look ahead plan, and then commit to your weekly work plan, getting real-time digital updates from site. So we understand digitalization is a big process, and for some companies it's a huge change. Here you see the change in process to a digital solution. At the moment, people are planning in isolation, not factoring in constraints or uncertainty. They have a need to a process where they plan collaboratively, making realistic commitments on a single digital platform. So digitalisation is key for distance working. So at the moment, what they're saying in the media, people might have to get used to working from home or working away from site. So a digital solution can help with task allocation, digitally assigning tasks to different teams, handovers between those teams, and notifying the next people in line that they can do their work, and real-time site updates. So getting information from site constantly without having to be there. And then being able to check the progress of the project in real time at all times. So again, alignment is key. So after we've kind of managed the process of change to a digital solution, alignment is a huge part of it. There are a lot of brilliant people in construction, but they aren't always aligned with each other or even the right processes or tech. If we can bring these things together, the industry has a better chance of surviving. So then some of the challenges the industry faces, so this was before obviously things like Brexit and COVID-19, these are things we've kind of observed by going to site. So constant changes in production plans. So things are changing on site, the goalposts are always moving, always changing. So how can you manage that? A big one is a clear lack of communication between teams. So people are working in silos, people are working on different platforms, different softwares. Some people are using Excel, Asta, P6, MS Projects, pen and paper. So there's a clear lack of communication between those teams. Delayed progress tracking. So by the time information gets back to the person who needs it, it's probably not up to date. For example, if you were sending around an Excel spreadsheet, by the time someone's received it, opened it, it's probably not up to date. So not identifying problems before they become serious problems. So trying to identify key triggers that could become a big issue beforehand. And limited performance review. What we tend to do in this industry is kind of analyze performance when things go wrong, but you can also analyze what went well. What could you standardize across this project and bring through to other projects, even if you're not building the same things. And then we've identified some core issues. So there's an inefficient information consolidation. So like I said, people are working in different platforms, Excel. There's a lot of good data out there, but no one's really kind of collecting it and putting it in one platform that everyone can have access to. And then again, a huge one, latency between reality and perception of a project. So people's perception of where progress is not always up to date, as people are working in different locations, different silos, planning in isolation, and giving information back not necessarily accurately. So our solution, Visilean, was created to basically tackle these issues that we face. So there's kind of 4 key pillars to Visilean. We've got mobility with the mobile apps. So this is separate to our software. It's a mobile app that's just used to update tasks that have been assigned through our software. Then we have our software, which is cloud-based. We've got the performance aspect. So this is our interactive dashboard that measures key data and analytics to help you continuously improve and evaluate your project. We have the visualization through the 3D modeling, and we have a collaboration tool. So this is an example of a project we're working with in Dublin on a data center with Mace. So this is what they call the gold command room. Now, I don't expect everyone to have this kind of setup, but this is where they did all their kind of collaborative meetings, kind of their push-pull planning. I think you can see in the next slide. So this is where they're doing their kind of 4D planning. So what you have here is a screen split in 50-50. At the top, you've got a 3D model. At the bottom, you've got our look-ahead solution. These here pink kind of squares are tasks. These tasks are linked to the model. So visually, it's a very powerful tool. So I know this pink color is not ready. So just by looking at the model, anything that pink color is not ready. So visually, I can just see the status of the project. I can go through the dates. I can see exactly what's being worked on, what's the status, and on the left-hand side here, who's responsible for it. So this is just an example of a few of the projects Visilean's working on. So like I said, we've got the data center in Dublin. We've got high-rise residential in West London. We're an enterprise solution for ALEC in the UAE across a wide variety of projects. We're on utilities projects for Scottish Water. And since this slide was made, we're working on Heathrow Airport, we're working on highways projects, and we're working on rail. I think the smallest it's been used on is like a Tesco Express, if you're familiar with those. So this is our core team. So obviously you have myself, you've got Dr. Bhargav and Martin, who are co-founders. It was Dr. Bhargav's kind of research that led to the tool. Martin came on to kind of push the business, and he's really big into the kind of product innovation. Then we've got Stefan, who's our software expert, who's the glue that holds everything together. And then we've got James, our senior sales manager, who you might know from LinkedIn or social media, who really pushes it. And then behind our team sits our advisors. So if you've ever studied Lean or BIM, Professor Larry Cascella and Professor Raphael Sex will be very familiar to you. And they're the world authorities in that. Professor Larry Cascella brought kind of Lean philosophy from manufacturing into construction. So then just a brief kind of history of kind of Visilean's journey. So it started in 2009 as a kind of a research tool. In 2012, we ran our first pilot on a highways project with Balfour Beatty. Dr. Bhargav then moved, completed his PhD and moved to Finland, where the year after he secured a commercialization grant. Then in 2015, Visilean, as you recognize it now, was founded. The year after that, we set up our technical development team in India. In 2017, we had our first customers, our first commercial customer. Then in 2018, we went out, got some more investment, and skipped 2 years to today. We're running in over 9 countries, off a wide variety of different projects and sectors. We won Innovation of the Year last year, and Mace released a case study using us, and since then it's just kind of exploded because we really got some good results on that project with them. So to digitalize with Visilean, there's kind of 4 steps. You've got the site reporting, where the foremen, site workers use the mobile app to update tasks that they've been assigned. You've then got our collaboration element with our scheduler, where you can have kind of digital sticky notes to plan and track the progress of the project. You've got the visualization element with the 3D models and our Gantt view. Then you've got live performance tracking through our interactive dashboard. So we're a cloud-based solution. So just to be clear, there's kind of 2 kind of parts of Visilean. There's the field app, which is separate, which you can download on any tablet or iOS or Android device. Then you've got the software. So the app is just for updating tasks and giving information back from site. The software is where you can plan, track, visualize the whole project, assign tasks, etc. It's cloud-based, so all you need to do is log into our website and you can access it from anywhere on pretty much any device. And it's all in real time. So the benefits of using Visilean and digitizing in general are huge. You're able to kind of plan and predict projects better, becoming more efficient in how you work. There's real-time collaboration and tracking, so handovers are automatic. Everything is seamless. Also, snagging is automatic as well. The whole kind of handover process is all automated, and all the whole history of everything's kept and logged, so you can see the data at the end of the project and analyze what went well, what didn't. The information is at hand at all times. So like I said, it's cloud-based, so you don't need to download anything or put anything on any hardware. You can just log in, it's available from everywhere. The data and analytics we collect, things like PPC, allow you to improve performance continually. And there's better communication all around because everyone's working off the same platform instead of working off all different softwares. We've created something that's simple and easy to use. So you don't need to be a planner or Revit expert to kind of navigate our plan or model. So I'll just briefly go through a few features of Visilean. So we've got our Gantt view. So this is a very top-down approach. If you're familiar with any sort of planning software, you'll really understand this. You can import your plan to us from P6, Asta, Excel, MS Projects, or anything you're comfortable with, or you can create it from scratch in Visilean. So as I said, this is top-down, very high-level plan. What you've got on the left-hand side is all of your task names. They're all color-coded. As soon as someone uses the mobile app to start a task or stop a task, the colors will automatically change. So visually, you've got a very good understanding of the status of tasks and the project. On the right-hand side here, I don't know if you can see, is a property panel, which each task has. So this is where you can find every bit of information from a task: start dates, end dates, the history. You can add notes to it that everyone can see. You can change quantities, units. It's just where you go to get all of the information. Everything that ever happens to a task is logged in history. So it's a good way of coming here to evaluate and analyze what went well, what didn't go well on the project. So this, as I said, this is the top-down approach. Then we move into our bottom-up. So I'll just do a quick poll here. Does anyone use sticky notes to plan collaboratively, or use the last planner system? If you just have a quick vote, just to make sure people haven't fallen asleep yet. Okay, so the majority of you still use sticky notes to plan, which is fantastic. So you'll be familiar with this. If you don't, I'll explain it. So that's fine. So at the moment, the majority of people use kind of manual sticky notes. They write out a sticky note for a task. They put it under the day or date they think it's going to work on. Now, the problem with that when we go to site is no one really takes responsibility for that task or action. Okay, so if something changes, they just move the sticky note along. Nothing's been recorded as to why that change happened or anything like that. If you can digitize that whole history, that whole action, everything can be logged, and you know who was responsible, why it was changed. So at the end of the project, you can again evaluate. So this is what we call our scheduler. So this is a look ahead plan, basically. You've got the current week, next week, 3 weeks ahead, 3 months ahead, and the last two can be configured to however you want them. We convert that plan that you either imported or created into us into these digital sticky notes you can see here. So once they're imported, they'll appear at the bottom, they'll all be unassigned. And the idea is you work your way back from the furthest period, assigning tasks. Now, that plan you imported might be at a very high level. So what we ask you to do is break it down into a bit more detail for work that will actually be done on site. And the idea of you use this kind of scheduler view to have your collaborative meetings with the people that are here on the left-hand side in either their team or their subcontractor and their employees underneath it. And you get them to commit to tasks that they realistically can do. So if you've got a task that's 4 weeks long, the software pushes you to kind of break it down into smaller, more measurable tasks. So ideally, no longer than a week, ideally. Because if something's 4 weeks long, by the time it's delayed, you won't know until about 2-3 weeks in. If you can break it down into smaller, more measurable chunks, you can then start to see issues before they become huge issues. So again, visually, this is a very powerful tool. I know this task here is red, so it's stopped. I know who's responsible for it. I can click on this task, I can see the history, and I can see everything, all within a couple of clicks. So it's a very, again, powerful tool to understand the status of tasks and the project. You can also shift it from either having the employees here and their teams or subcontractors on the left-hand side to locations. So the idea is you drag and drop a task to them after they've committed to it in a collaborative meeting, something they can actually do, and then they get a notification on their phone with all the information, and then they can start that task. What we also measure is how many of these tasks in a week were completed in that week. So it's something called percentage plan complete, if you're familiar with it. So if a task is a week long, we break it down and we measure how many tasks did they complete against what they said they were going to do. Then we've got the visualization element of Visilean. So we can import your model in IFC format and you can kind of navigate around it. And then you've got all the elements that make up the model on the left-hand side. Now, what we do say is if you are going to kind of use the model and kind of use it with a plan, make sure the model is relevant to the plan. If I'm doing kind of foundations for the next 6 weeks and I've imported a 6-week look ahead to Visilean, I don't need a finished model. What you want is a model relevant to that plan and what's actually going to be happening on site. The bigger the model, the harder it is to navigate, and the less relevant it will be to what you're actually using it for. So then once we've got kind of the 3D element and the collaboration down, you can move into kind of 4D planning, which is what I showed you that maze we're using earlier. So what you've got is the screen split 50-50. At the bottom, you've got the sticky notes, the scheduler view, and at the top, you've got the model. Each of these tasks are linked to the model. So just visually straight away, I know this part of the model is red, so it's stopped. I can scroll down on the scheduler, see who's responsible for that task, and then click on the task and see exactly why it's stopped, and they leave a note. Okay, again, I can go through the dates, and what will be highlighted on the model will be the tasks that are being worked on in those dates, and the color code will represent the status. So again, just very powerful, very visual. You don't have to be a Revit expert to kind of understand how to work the model or the status of it. Then finally, we move on to kind of our dashboard. So the dashboard is completely automatic. There's nothing you need to do yourself here. As soon as people on site start updating tasks, stopping tasks, this will all generate itself automatically. So this is where you can have your kind of view at 30,000 feet, the status of the progress of the project. So what you've got here is stopped tasks and delayed tasks. So in both of those, I can click on them, drill down, see who's responsible, why it's stopped or delayed, and then I can click on the task and go through the history and everything associated with it. So again, this is what I'd use if I had a weekly meeting. I'd use this to prompt the conversation. So we've got 15 stop tasks this week. Last week it was 16, so we've got one down. Can we get that down even more next week? And it will just be something to continually evaluate the project. At the bottom, we've got the pie charts. So reasons for stoppages, reasons for warnings. So basically, if someone's on site, they're using the mobile app, they press stop because the task has to stop. They're prompted to give a reason why and leave a note. We collect all that data and all that information and use it to start predicting trends. So we've got 15 stop tasks, 10 of those are material constraints. Going forward, can we get better at ordering materials and things like that? And it keeps a complete log. So if at the end of the project, you want to evaluate where the kind of weak links or stoppages were, this is where you can go. A complete log and history is kept without having to kind of manually input that information like you would now in Excel or different softwares. And on the bottom left-hand side, we've got the percentage plan complete graph. So this is measuring, going back to that scheduler view, how many of those tasks we completed against what we said we were going to do. So it's a really good way of seeing how kind of efficient are we being. Now, it's also a measure of the plan. So it's not necessarily, a measure of how hard people are working on site. It's a measure of how good the planning was. So in those collaborative meetings, are you breaking down tasks enough and getting people to commit to realistic enough tasks that they can actually do that we can measure? So if someone's working ahead of plan or behind the plan, then the PPC will be 0. So it's a measure of how good you are at kind of collaborating and committing to those tasks that you say you're going to do. So the more you can break things down into actual things you can do on site, the better your PPC will be. And there'll be no need for people just to say that they're going to do a task and it just doesn't get done or it gets pushed out or delayed. Okay, so that was the software aspect. And then we've got the mobile app. So once you assign a task using either the Gantt view or the scheduler, someone will get a notification this task has been given to them. They then have to check the prerequisites are good to go. So that's things like materials, tools, labor. Only once they've checked those things, which could be a few days before the task is due to start, can you actually start the task. So then you start the task and you've got this kind of green bar here, which is basically you slide it across to update progress. Now, the default progress is a percentage. If you have a specific unit or measurement that you want to measure, then you can change that. So if I was an electrician and I had 2,700 light switches to measure, the unit will be light switches, total will be 2,700. Then instead of having to guess what 50% is, I can scroll it across and see the exact unit. Okay. So then you can complete the task and kind of pick a person who's next in line, like your quality check person, to go and approve this. You can, if you're not ready to complete it and you want to alert people that something could cause you an issue, you can press the warning button. Again, that will ask you to give a reason why, leave a note, which we collect that data and it alerts everyone of that information. And same as stop if you want to stop a task. So if you're stopping a task, press stop, give a reason why, and leave a note. So that's really helpful information if someone's coming back at the end of the project to evaluate why this was stopped or what happened. And the same if you're handing this task over, it's useful information to know at one point that this task was stopped. On the app as well, you can add images. So if you've put the reason for stopping was there's a leak, you can take a photo, send it back to the software so everyone's aware and it's logged. You can send a note back to the software to make sure people are aware of what you need them to know. And you can view anything that they've sent from the software to the app. They can send files, they can send pictures, notes, everything. So just to summarize this session, digitalization is key, especially at the moment with people kind of working from home. Digital collaboration, again, is so important with people working from everywhere. Being able to kind of collaborate and make your plans, then kind of committing to work digitally. So assigning that to yourself, seeing the history, taking responsibility for that task. And then once you've done that, to be able to kind of manage progress, to be able to continuously review it to improve performance. So this is just to show you there's some upcoming sessions. Like I said at the beginning, I'm going to try and get some really good guest speakers, some kind of innovators in the field of construction and digital technology to kind of come on board and show you how they're doing it and using kind of some practical examples. And that is everything from me. So I'm going to open it up to a question and answer session and ask Dr. Bhargav and some of the team from Visilean to answer a few of your questions if I can't. So I'm just going to turn that on now. So you can just type a question. Richard, so you're saying, will this be repeated? It won't, but it is recorded, so I can send that to you. The dashboard potentially is customizable. At the moment, we collect a certain amount of data, but if there's anything specific you want us to collect, then we can. So integrations with other G Suite, Box, Salesforce. So we do have an open-ended API, so we can integrate with other softwares, which we are looking into at the moment. So softwares from loads of different types of kind of sectors, costings, kind of planning, everything like that. So that is something, if there's something more specific you want us to look at that, then maybe we can take that offline and ask. So in the reports, I could not find...
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. About the cost summary, so we are going to introduce that in our quite soon in the next release. So we will add kind of the cost box alongside the alongside the project progress, so you will be able to track the costs alongside kind of your bottom up task progress. And I think you Mandar has asked another question. You have asked, in the reports, you could not find the planned values against the actual. Actually, we track three kind of values. We track against the baseline. So we can track baseline against plans versus actual. And these are kind of the numbers as they come in. So the schedule sort of, we pick that up from the schedule, but it's also connected to the quantities as sort of which are input into Visilean. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Okay, next question. So how has the data exchange process worked between various platforms and softwares? So that's done in a variety of ways, basically. So we import the plan in loads of different formats. So Excel, MS Projects, P6, Asta, or you can just create a plan from scratch in us, and the models come in IFC format. Likewise, you can export from Visilean in several different formats. You can export back to the planning software you used, or you can export to PDF, CSV, basically. Not sure if there's anything to add on that one. How much worth of work was planned and how much work was actually done? I'll open that one up to Dr. Bhargav.
Yeah, I think that was the expansion of the previous question, because I think Mandar has now responded after that saying great. So I think that that's probably sort of answered. But yes, I mean that's all tracked within Visilean, so you can sort of check through the schedule. In the previous sort of question, in terms of how does the data exchange work, so it's basically we have import export functions with all major planning software, like Sebastian has mentioned. For example, P6, Asta, Microsoft Project. So you can import your plan, but you can also export back the actuals to those sort of planning software and track against them and forecast. And you can also re-import new versions of the plans as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. In PPC, so many foremen do participate in work. So how many foremen can use this mobile-based application under one subscription? So we do it on a per project basis, and it's unlimited users. So we know some of our competitors kind of charge per license, but in a environment where people are always kind of coming in out of work, projects completely changing, that didn't seem kind of viable for most people. So it's completely unlimited, and we price based on the value of the project. Next question. Does that happen in real time? So this is going back to, I believe, the data exchange. So yeah, it's basically just you kind of pressing export, for example, or download, and then you upload another file. So it's done as soon as you can do it, basically. I don't know if Dr. Bhargav wants to add to that.
No, it's a file-based import-export. So yeah, it's not real time.
Okay, next question. How is the progress updated by the supervisors at site in the form of percentage completed, linked with 3D model for visualization, then more specific to particular element rather than percentage? I'll open that one up to Dr. Bhargav.
The progress is updated against the quantities or kind of the percentage of on the task basis. The model is then linked to that task, so it's updated based on how the task is updated. The kind of the updates are not based on the model, but basically based on the task sort of percentage complete. Now, in order for this to be accurate, your model has to be then developed at the right level of detail, and then also integrated with your plan at the right level of detail. Then you will be able to sort of see the visualization. That's why I think Sebastian was mentioning that when you sort of import those models into Visilean, they need to be relevant to the work that you're doing, because you can actually go down to the level of, for example, look ahead or weekly level of planning. And if your model is too high level, then you're only going to be able to visualize sort of at that sort of scale. So I hope that answers the question. Okay.
Next one, is there a front-end dashboard to allow for ongoing monitoring and high-level project overview? So yes, there is. So the first kind of Visilean is a high-level dashboard, and then you can drill down to make it a bit more detailed. It was that kind of dashboard view I showed you during the kind of slides, basically. Next one. Does Visilean provide project management services for urban infrastructural projects? Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I think so. Yeah, sorry, Sagar. I think we have services team here in India, which kind of we do provide services in that sort of in that sector. In fact, one of our some of our sort of initial projects have been in the infrastructure. So surely we can discuss that if you have any specific needs.
Okay. So I think someone's typing, but if anyone got any more questions? Okay. Is it possible to view an overview of the crew size? So
yes, Swanhild, actually we have the potential to upload the crew size on weekly basis, so you can update how many crew members a particular team is going to bring against a particular task on weekly basis, and then you can compare against plan versus actual, and even on daily basis. So for example, you can check how many labor or how much crew was sort of planned for that particular day against and then sort of you can track the actual, that how many were actually then working on that day. So yes, that's possible.
I'm just interested to know if I can just do a quick poll here for those that are working. So I should have probably done this earlier, but just want to quickly understand those that are working in construction. Is your site kind of still open? And then if you're working from home at the moment. So if you just vote. So don't think you can see this, but the majority of sites are basically closed, and we've got kind of 20 people in this group, all in construction. So the majority of sites are closed, and the majority of people are working from home. So now you can probably understand the difficulties of collaborating with your team without digital tools at the moment, and kind of it's probably a really good time to kind of hone in your processes and kind of evaluate the status of your projects and how you can do things going forward. So let's go back to the questions. Yes, the webinar was recorded. We will send it out. Last question. So how can you authenticate the data updated by site people? So, I mean, the software doesn't replace anyone. So there is the need for kind of foremen and everything to go and check kind of work, and supervisors to still check things. But it makes it very clear what work has been done, what's the status of everything, what they should expect, everything like that. And it in a really kind of visual tool that's very easy for everyone to use. Okay, so we can end it there. I mean, I'll sit in the room for a little bit more longer if anyone's got any questions, but thank you so much for attending. As I said, we've got another one next week, which we'll send invites out to and kind of promote on social media. So thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks everybody, and stay safe. These are some challenging times, and thanks a lot, Seb, for kind of the great presentation. I think you know, it would be wise to say that this was kind of just an overview. Today we will go much deeper into some of these aspects. For example, lean planning, production, you know, lean production planning and control, sort of visual planning and things like that in sort of subsequent webinars. So you know, this was just kind of to start with an overview, and we'll start going into detail about certain processes and things as we progress further. So thanks a lot everybody for joining, and I think, like Seb said, we'll hang around in the room if anyone wants to ask any further questions. But thank you. Thanks for
And if anyone wants us to send in any topics that they'd like us to try and cover, please send them in and we'll do our best to try and cover everything.